Hey guys! Today I'm going to show you how you build a very special prop. Monami Park just released their new game Slime Rancher 2 and they asked us to bring Beatrix LeBeau's trusty Vacpack into the real world. She uses the Vacpack to interact with the world around her. It has a powerful vacuum that sucks up slimes, plorts and tons of other objects on Rainbow Island. And it also helps her to solve puzzles and move things around. We did our best to build it as game accurate as possible, including the rotation mechanism and all the LEDs. So if you want to see how we did that, lean back and enjoy. Monami Park was so kind to provide us with the 3D files for the Vacpack, but game files are not made for 3D printing. So first we had to figure out a plan to separate all the parts and make sure everything could be assembled properly. Another goal was to make the barrel spin just like in the game. So we had to come up with a solution to make that possible. For that, Ralph 3D modeled these ball bearings, which will not only make the barrel rotate, they'll also be powered by a separate motor, but more on that later. I 3D printed the ball bearings and in the middle of the printing process I paused the printer, added the metal balls and then let it continue. As you can see, this worked out really well. I'll definitely keep this trick in mind for future projects. Ralph spent quite some time on the 3D modeling and once he was done, we could finally print all the parts and assemble them to see if the plan actually worked. The barrel consists of 15 parts and something that's always important to us is designing our 3D prints so they can be assembled without any glue. This doesn't work for every part, but for the barrel we managed it pretty well. The barrel was looking great so far, so we could move on to the next step. The glass cylinder was a bit tricky because, well, it had to look like it was actually made of glass. We thought a clear resin print would be the best option. Even though it's a resin print, you still get visible print lines, so after curing it was sanding time. I bought all kinds of sandpaper because my first plan was to sand and polish the piece until it had a clear glass-like finish. So I spent 2 full days sanding the inside and the outside of the cylinder using finer and finer grit. I did a lot of wet sanding and in the end I still wasn't happy with the result and decided to use a clear coat instead. And as you can see, this was such a good decision. Just ignore the cat hair. Next I could assemble the main body of the Vacpack so we could finally test the rotation mechanism. For big props we like to add metal rods inside the prints for better stability. This is my cat Nona, one of my cosplay assistants, and she's a pro at spreading cat hair all over my props and costumes. I carefully added the clear cylinder and then finally attached the barrel so we could test the rotation mechanism. Looking good so far, but later it will be motorized. So we did a quick test with the motor as well. It already worked quite well, but we realized we'd need a stronger motor, but so far so good. Next came my least favorite part of any prop project, sanding. I spent a full week sanding all the 3D printed parts and I definitely gained some muscle doing it. Achieving smooth prints means sanding, then priming with spray filler, then sanding again until you get a nice clean surface. And the Vacpack is a pretty big and complex build with a lot of parts. I was so happy when sanding was finally done because that meant it was time for the best part, painting. I prepped all the parts and masked off a few that needed it. I tested some color options and finally found the perfect yellow, purple and brown. That moment when you finally start painting a prop you've been working on for weeks is just so satisfying. That's when the project really comes to life. I absolutely love the complementary color combo of dark purple and yellow orange. All parts received a base coat and then I added shading and highlights. The Vacpack has this cartoony look with bright highlighted edges. To get that effect, I painted the edges of the purple parts with a lighter purple, then wiped off the overspray to create the highlights. I used airbrush remover for that. It's strong enough to remove the airbrush paint, but won't damage the spray paint underneath. I also dabbed on a bit of color to give the whole thing a more used, weathered look. For the brown parts, I did the same thing in reverse. First applying a dark color, then wiping off the edges to get the highlight effect. Before painting the main body of the Vacpack, I had to assemble it. For the yellow parts, I used a bright orange to darken edges and crevices to give more depth and dimension. Then again I wiped the edges with cotton swabs to create that iconic cartoony look. Painting everything took a few days. It always takes longer than you think. To seal everything, I finished with a matte clear coat. But not all parts were finished yet. We made a few versions of the glowing spiral. The first one was a hollow print with LEDs inside, but the separate lights were too visible. The second version was a solid print with LEDs mounted behind. It looked better, but it was super heavy. The third attempt was a combination of both. We used a thin outer spiral with an inner spiral that had a built-in LED channel. To diffuse the light better, I sanded the outer layer and sprayed on a very thin translucent coat of paint. I did the same with the front part of the barrel, which we printed from the same translucent PLA. The barrel is the star of the whole piece. Not only does it look amazing, but it includes tons of LED details, and it will actually spin just like in the game. As you saw earlier, our first motor test worked okay, but not great. So this is a new, more powerful motor. This strange looking part is the connector that will spin the barrel. Ralph also built this little battery box. Everything is so thoroughly designed, he never ceases to amaze me. Here's the battery, the motor and the switch that controls it. The test run worked perfectly, so we continued with assembly and installed the switch in the handle. Every prop we build is basically a prototype, and you never know for sure if your plan will work until you try. Once all the parts were finished, it was time to assemble everything. While most parts of the Vacpack are designed to put together without glue, I still like to use super glue for added stability. Most parts are reinforced with aluminum rods, which are also used to route the wiring. Magnets work great for the parts that need to be removable, like the battery cover. Assembly was almost finished. I think putting everything together was even more fun than painting. And painting is normally my favorite part. The handle contains a big aluminum rod as well, since it's the part you grab the most, so it needs to be extra strong. As you can see, we were almost done, just the barrel was missing. Here's where the motor sits. We also had to fit all the LED electronics inside the barrel. I call this the heart of the Vacpack. That's where we installed everything needed for the animated LEDs, like the Trinket microcontroller and the power boost. Here's the on-off switch and the charging port. This lithium-ion battery is rechargeable, and it fits so perfectly. The battery is connected to the power boost. In Germany we call these Vago clamps. I'm not sure what they are called elsewhere, but they are used to connect the LEDs to the microcontroller. The barrel has a ton of LEDs. Ralph glued little translucent PLA prints onto each LED to help diffuse the light. Now you can see how the LED spiral is built. First there's the inner LED channel, and then the outer spiral, which I sanded and painted to diffuse the light even more. And it looks amazing. Ralph also installed LEDs to the front part of the barrel, and here's how it looks fully assembled. In the center there is the power switch and charging port. We also added a small motor to spin this section. In the game that part is always rotating, and of course we wanted it to be as accurate as possible. Engineering the whole barrel was a real challenge. We balanced all the components, including the battery and the LED circuit, so that the barrel center of mass aligns perfectly with its axis of rotation. Now that all parts were done, we could finally attach the barrel. The tube on the bottom was the very last piece, because once that's in place, the Vacpack can no longer stand upright. And then I realized I almost forgot the fabric straps wrapped around the handles. After almost 4 weeks of 3D modeling and engineering, printing, sanding, painting, wiring up the electronics and then assembling everything, the Vacpack is finally done. If you want to see it in real life, you can visit the Art of Slime Rancher exhibition at Gallery Nucleus starting November 8th, which is also my birthday, by the way. Also make sure to check out Slime Rancher 2 and explore the vibrant world of Rainbow Island. We are super proud how the Vacpack turned out. Thank you Monami Park for the trust in our work.